Hello again, my name's Sean Kehoe. I'm the chairman of UKIP in the Erewash constituency, and I've been doing a series of talks on the manifesto. And today I want to start a little mini-series, you might call it, on item 1 in the manifesto, which is Brexit. And the reason I need to do more than one talk is because it's a big subject and I don't want to make the talks too long. So here's the first in that little mini-series. And so let me begin by saying this. There has been, and I think there is now, a great deal of confusion, and the confusion is growing. People feel bewildered and baffled by the whole Brexit fiasco and what's unfolding even now in the House of Commons with all the circus performance that's going on and the nonsense of it all. And that confusion is not a coincidence or by accident. It's due to deliberate lies and propaganda put out by the government. They want you to be confused. They want you not to understand. They want you to be bored of all this. They want you to just give up the will to live over this whole Brexit issue. But we mustn't. So let me look again and at the basics of all this. In this series of talks, I want to begin today by just re-examining why did we vote to leave? Why did we do that in the first place? Then I shall go on in the subsequent talks to look at defining all these complicated words and phrases that are bandied about. And then I want to look at what should Mrs. May have done. And then I want to look at what did she do and why has she made such a mess of it all. Okay, so why did we vote leave nearly 3 years ago? Firstly, because the British people had enough common sense in their instincts to know that we don't want to keep giving money to the European Union. You keep seeing these signs on the side of motorways and so forth saying this project is funded by the European Union, and they brag about it as if they're being generous to us. But anyone with any common sense realises that that's money we gave to them for them to give it back to us. Now, would you give someone you know a £20 note so that he can give you back a £10 note, and then he tells you what you must do with the £10 note and how you must spend it? And he requires you to put a sign up outside your house saying how grateful you are to him for the £10 note. Now that's exactly what the European Union does with us. And the public have enough native savviness and enough wisdom to realise that that's just a load of rubbish. So there's that. That's one reason. The second reason was to escape from European Union laws and directives which have simply taken over. 3/4 of all the laws passed in the House of Commons are not legislation of the House of Commons. They are simply the implementation, the putting into effect of European Union directives. They rule everything we do with massively complicated regulations and directives on everything you could think of that we then have to implement. So our Parliament has turned into a kind of county council. We just implement what they say. So, thirdly, it was to end the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice and the European Court of Human Rights, which rule over us. Now, we, for 800 years, have had our own courts, which give us our own laws, our own common law that we've grown up with and that we so love and which we've exported to the world. But here we are now. And our courts are answerable to this foreign court, the European Court of Justice. It's an outrage. What on earth are we doing? How would you do this if it wasn't already happening? Would you make it up this way if you were choosing what to do now? It's just ridiculous. Fourthly, to end the free movement of labour. We've seen that there has been a tremendous problem in the United Kingdom with immigration. And it comes immigration from all sorts of places, but one of those places is the European Union. And that's because of what's called the 4 freedoms, one of which is the free movement of labour. Now, being part of the European Union and being part of the customs union and the single market requires this. You have to let everybody from the European Union come and work here if they want to and claim benefits here if they want to. And there's nothing we can do about it. Well, the British people have enough common sense to realise that that's an absurdity. Fifthly, to get back our total sovereignty, to be an independent sovereign nation like the United States and China and Japan and the rest of the world. Every other country is sovereign over itself except the members of the European Union. This is a unique project where people sort of subjugate themselves to another institution and lose their own national sovereignty. And to speak of sovereignty is mocked by those who adopt a Remain position. They speak as if this is some kind of foolishness on our part, some kind of Little Englander idea, whereby we're narrow-minded and bigoted and so on. It isn't. It's just the desire to have the freedom to decide for yourself what to do. It's not complicated. It's so simple. The British people can see it. It's like George Orwell said, there are some things that only an intellectual could be stupid enough to say. And this is one of them. Objecting to your own sovereignty. How can you object to that? Free trade with the whole world. The World Trade Organization organizes 164 nations and arranges for free trade between them. Now, if we leave the European Union, we can trade with all of them freely and make arrangements with them. And they're not small countries. China, Japan, United States, Singapore, and India and Brazil, and on it goes. Huge countries that we could trade with. And at the moment, we can't without imposing tariffs against them, thus impairing our ability to trade with 90% of the world, just so that we can trade more freely with the European Union. It doesn't make any sense at all. Next, to regain our fishing waters. This is, again, a scandal, what's happened. We gave away all our own waters. I spoke about this in an earlier talk. And the British people wanted those fishing waters back. Agriculture. We want to be able to make our own decisions about how to do our own farming in our own way, and to give priority to what we want to give priority to. Next, to end red tape. European Union red tape. They absolutely love making rules and regulations, and I mean massively long and complicated ones. And the point is, these regulations apply to everybody, not just those people who are trading with the European Union. It doesn't matter whether you're trading or not. You have to obey these rules about how things should be done, regardless. And the cost of that is very high, even though it's an invisible cost. It's not something you can say, oh, it's 4% or 8% or something. It's an invisible cost that manufacturers and service providers have to pay. Next, to withdraw from PESCO, which is like the European Union Defence Union. Now, this is the thing that Nick Clegg denied existed and said would never happen. And 5 minutes after he left office, there it was, happening. He knew exactly what was happening, and he lied about it to us. And again, the freedom to operate independently, just to be a nation that can do what it wants, where it wants, how it wants, when it wants. Now, all of this, voting leave, was never conditional upon getting a deal. This idea of a deal came in long after the referendum. That was never in our minds at the time. We were simply asked, do we want to stay in the European Union or not? And we gave a very clear answer with a very significant majority. Now, all this confusion I mentioned is not an accident or a coincidence. The government and the media, which are working in concert with them, they want you to be confused, they want you to be bewildered, and they want you to be bored, so that you won't trust your own instincts, that you'll begin to doubt your own judgment, and you'll feel, do I really know what I'm talking about? Do I really know why I voted leave? Maybe I just got it all wrong. Maybe these intelligent people from London, maybe these MPs, they know better than me. Perhaps I should leave it to them. That's what they want you to do. And have you noticed, for example, how they refer endlessly to the phrase crashing out? Now, this is a phrase they've invented to signify the leaving of the European Union without a deal. Now, they deliberately put it in these pejorative terms, crashing out, as if it's like a car crash. It isn't. You don't sort of crash out of a theatre at night, do you? You don't crash out of a pub or crash out of a restaurant that you don't like. You simply leave the restaurant. You don't say, I'm going to crash out of this restaurant. You just leave it. And that's what we want to do. Now, that phrase is being used because they They deliberately want you to hear that phrase 20 times a day, coming from every kind of radio and TV programme, and it's coming out of the mouth of every politician on the Remain side. They want you to hear it hundreds and hundreds of times, so that the subliminal message will be fixed in your mind that if we leave the European Union without this deal, then we're absolutely, completely doomed. It's going to be terrible for us. And they're pushing, therefore, as part of this project fear, this idea that things will be terrible for us if we leave the European Union without this deal. They're speaking about even the most absurd things. It's an insult to your intelligence about how lettuces might be delayed in coming into the United Kingdom. So if you want to eat salad, then you might find that lettuce might not be available for a day or two, and therefore you'll have to eat something else. Well, can you imagine in World War II, the politicians of that time talking in that way? Can you imagine Winston Churchill talking like that? We will provide lettuces on the beaches. We'll provide lettuces on the seas and oceans. We'll provide lettuces in the sky. Can you imagine such nonsense? It's just so silly. And just the other day I heard a woman, a Plaid Cymru MP, speaking about a thing called the Erasmus scheme. Now this is a scheme whereby students from the United Kingdom can go and study abroad in European universities, and of course they can come here. And she was implying that she's wanting Remain and wanting to oppose a clear and definite positive Brexit so that the Erasmus scheme can carry on. Now, I don't know whether she was lying or whether she's just totally misinformed, but she was speaking about her daughter went on the Erasmus scheme and she wants other people's daughters to be able to go on it. Oh, so emotional. But the point is, it's nonsense. The Erasmus scheme has nothing at all to do with the European Union and will not end or change whether we stay in the European Union or not. And the idea that if we were to leave the European Union, those countries would then stop letting our students go to their universities to study is a nonsense. If we go to their universities, we have to pay. And when they come to us, which is what they want to do, they are learning English and perfecting their English. And the vast majority of students from the mainland of Europe who want to study under the Erasmus scheme, they want to come to the United Kingdom to learn English. You don't find German students wanting to go and study in Portugal or somewhere. They want to come here. So the idea that they would stop the scheme is a complete nonsense. And I would submit it's a lie. If I know that, she must have known that when she said it in the House of Commons. So in addition to Project Fear, as I've alluded to, you also have what I would call Project Boredom. They just want to bore you to death with all this so that you'll simply say, look, I can't take any more. I just can't stand hearing any more about Brexit. They are deliberately trying to wear you out and to wear out your willingness to fight for this cause. Now, please, I appeal to you, don't give in to them. We must fight all the more vigorously for what we believe in and fight for Brexit. We cannot give in and we must not give in. Now, in the next talks, I'll go on to look at some of those other things I mentioned. So please come back to listen to those. Thank you very much.